In Mexico, hundreds of migrants demonstrated to demand that safe passage through Guatemala's borderline areas in the caravan and halt of raids against undocumented migrants. In East Philippines, the Bulusan volcano spewed a huge dark cloud on Sunday, prompting evacuations of ash-covered towns, as authorities warned of possible further eruptions. In Kazakhstan, 77% of voters approved the constitutional reform proposed by the president in the referendum. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Hundreds of migrants demonstrated on Sunday in the Mexican city of Tapachula, on the border with Guatemala, to demand that authorities allow them to live in a caravan and that raids against undocumented asylum seekers stop. Hundreds of undocumented migrants demonstrated in a park in Tapachula to demand that their caravan, which intends to leave on Monday for the Mexican capital, be allowed to pass. The demonstration took place at a time when police sources indicate that some 30 migrants have been detained and transferred to an immigration detention center. The migrants claim that such detentions are meant to discourage them in their attempt of reaching Mexico City in the eve of the Summit of the Americas, which coincidentally will have migration as one of the top issues of an agenda. Also in Mexico, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's Morena party wins 4 of the 6 governorships in dispute of this Sunday's regional elections. According to the quick count of the Mexican National Electoral Institute, INE, the governing party Morena won in the states of Hidalgo, Oaxaca, Quintana Roo, and Tamaulipas, while in the remaining states, the candidates of the coalition led by the PAN and the PRI won. In this way, the Morena party wins the governorships of 21 of the 32 states of the country. In Bolivia, there is expectation for the resumption of the only judicial process which is being tried in the ordinary justice system against former Senator Yanine Áñez and other 8 former military and police chiefs for alleged crimes committed before the senator proclaimed herself the president of the country in November 2019. Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, with the details.
The first sentencing court convened the resumption of the trial as of Monday, June the 6th. The defense of former Senator Yanine Áñez is still confident that he can continue to delay the trial and the verdict.
The procedures have not been finished yet at the Constitutional Court level. This process cannot continue.
A conviction against my mother is a death sentence for democracy in Bolivia, and all Bolivians must keep in mind that they are taking away our democracy. They are taking away our freedom.
In the meantime, the prosecutor's office prepares the closing arguments, which will lead to the delivery of the sentence.
We are preparing the allegations, and we hope by Saturday we will have them ready. We have presented the indictment. They haven't withdrawn any type of evidence from us.
Yanine Áñez is being prosecuted for alleged crimes committed before she proclaimed herself in the Legislative Assembly without a quorum, first President of the Senate and then President of Bolivia, replacing Evo Morales, who was forced by police and military to resign. Before the prosecutor's office, she explained that she was invited by a group of right-wing leaders to take over the government, and did so. Weeks later, one of the leaders of the coup explained it in Mexico.
In 2005, Evo Morales blocked the country. He asked for Carlos Mesa's resignation, who resigned in 2005. The president of the Senate resigned, the leader of their deputies resigned, and we ended up with a judge, Rodriguez Betze. He was sworn in a session where there was no quorum at all.
Quiroga and other leaders of the political crisis of November 2019 boasted of having succeeded in overthrowing Evo Morales and the movement for socialism. Quiroga even gave orders to the military, such as authorizing the entry of a Mexican plane to take Morales into exile.
Regarding the entry permit of the Mexican plane, I never thought I would end up as Evo Morales' travel agent, but in the power vacuum, the Mexican plane was in Peru. It did not enter. I talked to the people of the Air Force. I told them to give permission to pacify the country, and also I will not deny, because the fact that he boarded the Mexican plane and went to asylum meant leaving office, abandonment of functions, and made the constitutional succession effective.
On November the 9th, 2019, one day before Evo Morales was forced to resign, the leaders of the movement were clear that there could be no constitutional succession because, according to the laws of the country, only parliamentarians of the movement to socialism led by Morales himself could assume the presidency of the chambers and succeed Morales.
Look, the issue of succession, with all due respect, read the Constitution. Between Evo Morales, Garcia Linera, and the chamber president left the devil come and choose.
During Yanine Áñez's one-year government, there were acts of corruption and massive human rights violations, including 2 massacres. But the ordinary process for violations of law is only processed before taking office. The possibility of accountability trials, as she demands, is uncertain due to the fact that a 2/3 vote is needed, which requires the support of Creemos and Comunidad Ciudadana, the 2 right-wing forces that participated in the coup.
Freddy Morales, TeleSUR, Bolivia.
Now we move on to other topics. In the United States, there has been 3 mass shootings over the weekend, with left 9 people dead and dozens wounded. 3 U.S. cities were the scene of the latest outbreak of gun violence in the country between Saturday night and Sunday morning. In Philadelphia, a confrontation between 2 men led to a shooting in which 3 people were killed and 12 were injured. On Saturday, past midnight, there was another shooting in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which left 3 dead and 14 wounded. Then, in the early hours of Sunday, 3 people were killed and another 2 injured in Saginaw, Michigan. This Sunday, former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva tested positive for coronavirus along with his wife Rosângela Janja da Silva. The news was confirmed by the press office of the former president, who is now a candidate for the October presidential elections. Lula's campaign published a message on Twitter saying that Lula and his wife are doing well, that he is asymptomatic and that his wife only has mild symptoms, and that they will remain in house isolation for the next few days. Regarding the upcoming elections, most polls give Lula a voting intention of around 45% over the incumbent Jair Bolsonaro, who is expected to get only 30% of the votes. And TeleSUR expands its signal with new satellite parameters, since more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are being heard in other farther away nations. These parameters are in place since June the 1st in Latin America and the Caribbean, both in English and in Spanish, and quite soon further changes will be implemented for the signals in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. This new multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and to provide our faithfulness to our audience. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. In East Philippines, the Bolusian volcano spewed a huge dark cloud on Sunday, prompting evacuations of ash-covered towns as authorities warned of possible further eruptions. The explosion of the volcano in rural Sorsogon province lasted about 70 minutes and sent a gray plume rising at least a kilometer, according to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology. No casualties were reported, but authorities raised the alert level to 1 in the 5-tier system, indicating low-level unrest. The local government of Sorsogon, about 500 kilometers south of the capital Manila, said 10 villages in 2 localities were affected by the ash. Now we move on to other topics. Russia's President Vladimir Putin warned that a new U.S. military aid package to Ukraine will not bring about positive changes in the country. In statements to the press, the Russian president denounced that the additional deliveries of weapons to Kiev have only one goal: to extend the conflict on the Ukrainian territory. In view of this fact, he warned that in the event that Ukraine receives long-range missiles from the United States, Moscow will take the appropriate conclusions and will use its means of destruction to hit the facilities that they have avoided to attack up so far. Putin's statements come in response to remarks by his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden, who officially announced last week the delivery of a new military aid package to Ukraine, which will include HIMARS multiple rockets launchers and a type of long-range weapon that Kiev has been requesting for months from its Western allies in the midst of the Russian military operation in the neighboring territory, initiated on February 24th.
If they supply the long-range missiles to Ukraine, we will draw the appropriate conclusions and use our weapons, of which we have enough, to strike targets we haven't yet hit. All this kerfuffle around additional arms deliveries serves only one goal: to prolong the armed conflict as long as possible.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. In Kazakhstan, 77% of voters approved the constitutional reform proposed by the president in referendum, the country's electoral authority said on Monday. A total of 6 million voters, or 77%, voted yes in the referendum, according to Nurlan Abidov, the chairman of the Central Election Commission. Kazakhstan President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev proposed at the end of April that constitutional amendments aimed at modernizing and democratizing the country's political system should be put to a referendum. In mid-March, Tokayev outlined its political reform plan, which includes completing the transition from super-presidentialism to a presidential republic model, but with a strong parliament, reducing the excessive powers of the head of state and banning by law his political affiliation during the term in office. The British Parliament voted on Monday afternoon on a motion of censure against Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The motion was put forward by Graham Brady, the chairman of the Conservative group, which is not part of the government. Brady claims to have enough MPs, members of parliament, supporting the motion, following the Premier's scandals over parties at 10 Downing Street during the pandemic. On his part, a spokesperson for the Prime Minister's office said that Boris Johnson welcomes the opportunity to present his case before the parliament. The committee's chairman said that the votes will be counted immediately after the voting session, and an announcement will be made as soon as the outcome is known. For the no-confidence vote to succeed, at least 54 letters from Conservative members of Parliament are needed. On Monday, the United States and South Korea fired 8 ballistic missiles into the Sea of Japan in response to the launches made by North Korea on Sunday. According to the South Korean Joint Chief of Staff, the allies reportedly launched surface-to-surface missiles at the targets in the sea, also known as the Sea of Japan. The 10-minute barrage comes a day after Pyongyang launched 8 short-range ballistic missiles following a joint U.S.-South Korea military drill that mobilized an aircraft carrier. Both governments condemned this action by North Korea, which they described as provocative, and urged to stop acts that increase military tensions in the peninsula. And after the ballistic missile launch, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol vowed to respond firmly and strongly to any North Korean provocation.
Our government will firmly confront any provocation by North Korea, as we deter North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. We will pursue fundamental and practical security capabilities.
At the same time, the South Korean leader considered North Korea's tests a threat to the region.
Even at this moment, North Korean nuclear and missile threats are increasing. Yesterday, several types of ballistic missiles were launched. North Korea's nuclear weapons and missile programs have grown to the point where they are a threat not only to the Korean peninsula, but to Northeast Asia and world peace.
And 59 people of the Rohingya minority were discovered after being abandoned on an island in Thailand on Sunday, Thai police said. Thai police said asylum seekers had been without food for 3 to 5 days after being abandoned by smugglers in the route to Malaysia. The group, including 5 children, was found Saturday on Koh Don Island in the southern province of Satun, said Lieutenant General Surachet Khakpan. Every year, thousands of people from the mostly Muslim Rohingya minority, heavily persecuted by Myanmar's Buddhist majority, risk their lives on costly months-long journeys to reach Malaysia across the seas from Thailand. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.